Hello, good evening. Welcome to yet another episode of the Diaspora Spotlight. My name is Njoroge from the Kenyan Diaspora Media. Throughout the beginning of this day to this hour, we have been following diaspora conversations in terms of Kenyans who are in the diaspora in different parts of the globe. There are some from the United Kingdom, there are some from the United States of America, some from Canada, some from Norway, some from the United Arab Emirates. They have come home with stories of success and stories of giving back. One such person that I have with me today is Dr. Koyabe. I want him to tell us his full names, where he comes from in Kenya, and where he stays in diaspora.
Thank you very much for having me on this particular platform. And what a pleasure to meet with you again. Yes, my name's Dr. Martin Koyabe, and my home county is actually Bungoma County in Kenya. I have a very, very different history because my parents actually moved from, my dad actually moved from the Sabot, which is the Elgon Masais. They came and settled in Bungoma County, but my mom comes from Kakamega, so that forms who I am.
Interesting. I haven't talked to a lot of people. Actually, you're the first person from Bungoma that I am talking to, so this is quite phenomenal. I'm curious to hear about that part of the country from a global point of view.
What actually happened is that Bungoma County, apparently in history, lent money to the British establishment at some point. That is actually how far we go. We do have a lot of agricultural products, as you know. Sugarcane is one of our main ones. We've got maize. We've got cash crops that do grow in that part of the world, including coffee. We are now doing fish farming. So there's quite a bit of agricultural activity going on in that part. We're also known for having so many gods. You've seen the god Elijah, the god of something coming from that county. But again, we're also known for our hospitality. We've got very nice culinary varieties with the ingoho, the mbogas and all that. So we do have quite a lot of that. And also the people have a lot of history when you look at how far we've come, especially the leaders in the country. You would find that the likes of Elijah Mangale, who was actually a leader at some point, was of course the Speaker of the House. You've got the governor of, the former governor of Bungoma County and the current governor of Bungoma County. And then you also have other leaders within the region, members of parliament. We've got various other luminaries who have come from there, especially scholars who have come from that particular part of the world, including ourselves today.
Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Dr. Martin. I have a respect for doctors. I would assume it's an academic qualification, or are you a doctor by profession?
It's an academic qualification, actually. I'm a telecommunication engineer. It started a long way back. Historically, actually, I was credited to be among the first Kenyans, including my very, very good friend, Dr. Shemo Chodo, and Paul Olendo, who might be hearing this, to be the first engineers to have actually put the full internet during our time at the Africa Regional Center for Computing. And this was in 1993. So historically, actually, in the history books of the country, we were the first engineers to bring the full internet that you enjoy today in Kenya. 1993.
How many of us were born, if you're watching this, in 1993, graduated school, you were a doctor by then?
At the time, I was still, I just completed my undergraduate, and I'd done my postgraduate diploma from Chiromo. And I was a very aspiring engineer at the time, before I went back to further studies in the UK.
Okay, that's very impressive. I think when we look at the developments that we have as a country right now, it's nice to go back in history and actually realize that there are actual people behind these developments.
Yes, indeed, because when you look at how the internet grew in the country, it was a really concerted effort of a number of people. In fact, it wasn't only us. There were other collaborators who were in the US. We had collaborators in the continent who were looking at how to bring full internet into the country. We were also assisted by very, very nice people. I know for those of you who will hear this, somebody like Randy Bush, who is a well-known engineer, Steve Hunter, who is a well-known engineer, were some of the American pioneers who actually took us through how you can build systems to make sure that you can be able to have full internet. At the time, we used to have what they call store and forward. meaning you had emails that were in a server, and you would actually dial into the server to pick the emails for the day. And then you'd wait in the evening, then you'd dial again, pick the email that you had using the normal telephone line. And that's how we started growing that knowledge of knowing exactly what an email is, what you can use it for. Attachments were not that big. We couldn't do a lot of videos at the time, but the interest grew from there. And then some of us went further to really discover how you can use full internet. In fact, I remember I went to South Africa in 1994, I believe, with a very good friend of mine called Njoroge. He's a professor now. We went to give a paper, and at that time, the paper was actually on telematics. Telematics was the method of how you could use normal IT or communication in solving medical issues. For example, you'd have a doctor remotely based doing an operation in another set of a country. And that is the idea we were talking about at that time. When we did this presentation, it then led to other issues, hence the reason why I'm here.
Okay, wow, that's really interesting, because since 1993, 1994, I believe there is a lot that has changed in the country. So was that visit to South Africa in 1994 your first interaction with diaspora, or at what point did you not leave Kenya and go outside?
Yeah, indeed, actually in 1993 was the first time I'd left the country. I'd left the country severally because I'd gone to Arusha and other places. But at that point, actually, I'd gone to South Africa at the time. Though my mom tells me I'd been taken to Australia when I was young, but I've never come to that. But the point was that that was the first time, I would say, as an adult, that I actually interacted with the diaspora. And of course, made my contacts, knew a few people, and hence the reason why we're here.
So you're still rushing me to get me to the reason why we're here, but I want to get a full story of, did you live here to work, or did you go to study?
It was a very interesting story. I know this has never been said publicly, but now that you've asked, what happened is when I did that paper, I met a professor called Professor Julian Hilton. He actually told me that he was very keen to understand more of what I was talking about. And he proposed that he would be able to wait to see if I can give him a proposal on that area that I discussed. And at the time, I remember I had an application which I had already applied to Bristol University and Oxford. And I had an application form, and I had applied and they had replied, but I didn't have the money. So then they told me that, he told me, if you give us a proposal that sounds good, we'll see what we can do for you. And then I came back, did the proposal, sent it to him, and I just forgot about it. And one time my friend, Paul, I'm sure Paul, wherever you are, you know this, he then tells me, Martin, I've seen an email that has come. Could you just read it? I don't know what it talks about, but it's saying some sponsorship of some sort. And when I looked at this email, it was actually the professor had written, because he used to have a company called Telos, Bioinformatics. And then he tells me that, Martin, I think you are the perfect person that we need in our company. And I actually was given a full scholarship. At the time, I was going to Bristol University to do multimedia and global computing. I had just done my postgraduate diploma at Chiromo, so I went to Bristol on a full paid scholarship. In fact, I had to work in their company while I was studying. So actually I had a job and then I had a full scholarship. So that's actually how some of us made it from the likes of what people see.
Oh, talk about being God's favorite, because I can imagine just how many dark set to align for that to work.
It wasn't easy at the time, but I think what happened was we were shaped by the country's political climate at the time. We were very ambitious in terms of what we wanted to do as young people. We really knew our focus. We had training from the likes of course, Shem is my mentor, and other people who were very, very good at really training us. I also remember one of my professors, Dr. Gerald Kotonya, and he's in Lancaster, a well-known software engineer and a very respectful person. One of my best mentors, by the way. And a friend of mine called Eric Aduda, he was in Starehe. So he's the one who moved me toward computing. And then, of course, I made my way around that. That's actually how we did.
I think we are closer to home to actually talking about why we are here today, because you were skipping that bit about that little personal history.
I know you've actually pushed me a little bit, but I think I just thought it's wise that for those of you us who are out there, and I'm sure we have very young people out there, young Kenyans, both young men and women who are really looking at what is it that they need to do. And I think the ability of an individual, it's an inward, what we call, you've got to realize what you have to do. And many people, I think, out there do have what we call the X factor, but they've never had an opportunity to realize that X factor. My point here is that we need to always discover what we can do. We are not here just for the purposes of just being here. We're here for a purpose. And each one of us has a purpose here. I think you have a purpose, everybody has a purpose. So it's always good that we discover what it is and then try and pursue it to the fullest.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Kenya at this particular time? Do you come often?
Yes, I do. I'm quite often here. Me being here has been quite a coincidence in terms of my schedule. I'm a consultant at the moment. I had to go to Cape Town, where I was on the 28th till the 29th. I gave a keynote in the IT Web Summit, and then I flew back to Nairobi on the 30th, and then flew into Tanzania the same time to attend what they call the Internet Governance Forum in Africa. And then I flew back to Nairobi, and then I waited for about a week, and then flew to Juba to go and attend what we call the East African Communication Organization Annual Assembly. And I presented again a paper there, and then I flew back, and then I'm here. And of course, I'm waiting to fly out to Benin in Cotonou before I go back to London.
Okay, wow, that seems like a lot of traveling. How do you keep up with all that?
It's not easy because remember, I also have a daughter, and I know where she is. She's just wondering where is daddy.
Is she here?
But she's very much used to my travel. So the point is that we do have a way around it. But it's not easy because it's demanding, and at the same time, you've got to be a father. And as maybe you might not know, I'm a single father, so the point is that it's quite tough.
Okay.
But we do keep up with it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that facet of your life. I know that today you have been in meetings with the technical working group and as part of the Kenyans from the diaspora. Is that something that you can speak to?
Yeah, there are a number of areas that we've actually covered a lot of ground. So for those of you who might be wondering what is this technical working group, it's a multi-diaspora group where we've got different diaspora participants who have come together to form what we call the Kenya Diaspora Technical Working Group. Danson, Mokile, myself, and others are the ones leading the group in order to be able to address some of the issues that are facing the country. One of the issues that was very pivotal in the group is the follow-up on the electoral reforms, looking at the need to increase the voting rights of Kenyans in the diaspora. It's not easy to look at how people vote and increasing the voting of the diaspora because you have to change some of the regulations of the IEBC, that is the Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission. And then, of course, the idea that all of us have a right to vote in order to participate in both the political and the governance of our country. And the question is, when you look at the diaspora, we are widespread. And one of the Regulation 34, Section 2 of the IEBC clearly states that the voting or a polling station can only be in what you call an embassy or a consulate or a high commission. That idea sounds good when you have a cluster of population around those areas. But when you look at, let's say, the US, for example, Los Angeles has a consulate. We have an embassy in Washington, D.C., and we have a diplomatic office in New York. These are the only points where Kenyans can vote, get registration, and be able to verify their registrations. The point is, we need to increase the number of polling stations to cities such as Seattle, to go to areas kind of Minnesota, come to Texas and Atlanta, and even Boston, where you have a large cluster of Kenyans that can be able to vote, so that we reduce the cost of voting and increase voter apathy. The same applies to other areas. So if you take Europe, for example, Berlin was the only station in Germany that was allowed to allow Kenyans to vote from. But we know that Frankfurt, which is actually the financial capital city of Europe, because the UK is no longer in the EU, is actually also a possible area where you have a large cluster of Kenyans. And that disproportionate distribution of voting polls and voting stations is what we're trying to really work against. Another example that I can give is Australia, which is actually quite vast. And that one again, Canberra is the only place where they could go and vote. But we have a lot of people in Sydney, Perth, and so forth. So we need to have an increased area. China is the same. If you come to the Scandinavian countries, Poland, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and so forth, could not even vote in Stockholm. They had to go all the way back to Berlin. And that is the problem that we have in the diaspora. So the question was one of the key areas we're trying to address in this particular electoral reforms that we've been pushing for, is the amendment of that particular clause or that particular regulation, which actually requires parliamentarians who are listening and others to really support those changes that we are proposing. There are roughly about 11 issues, but I've just touched on one. The other one are things like the timings. Should it be based on the 6 to 6 or 6 to 5 or whatever time the voting is, based on the local time, but not based on the Kenyan time. So those are the issues that were not necessarily clear, but we need to make them really work for the Kenyans. What we find a little bit absurd, and which has really set us back a bit, is the recent ruling that was done in the courts, where we can't have diasporans voting using an ID. They can only vote using a passport. But for whichever reason, these two documents in the constitutions are valid as voting documents. So is it that because it's in the diaspora, then we have to have that as a change of it? So we need to really we need to align all these kind of principles with what we need to do. So these are the areas that we've been trying to look at within the working group.
I feel like that's a conversation that is still ongoing, and I hope that by the time you conclude this particular working group, this actually gets to be an issue that you address. It's something that I've had a lot of diaspora people talking about, and one of those things that they're saying is you want to be looked more as development partners instead of people that just send money home.
This was actually a quote that I was quoted somewhere in terms of what our remittance does. So if you look at our remittance, which is nearly $5 billion of last year, and it's growing, most likely it might hit even $6 billion. We are seeing that there is more money that the diasporans are remitting in the country. But when you look at this amount of money, 75% to 80% is going just to support the social aspects of our families, whether it's health, whether it's school fees, and so forth. What we want to do is to move from what we call a consumer-based type of investment, which is what we are doing at the moment, or remittance for that matter, to what we call an investment type of remittance, where our remittance goes to specific investment. We understand that there are things such as the infrastructure bonds or the diaspora bond, which is what has been discussed. This is something that is welcome, but we could do better, because we could have instruments of investments other than the diaspora bond that could enable monies that are put by the diasporians to go into those investments. For example, we are here also to talk to the likes of various institutions, including Konza, Kenya Airways, and so forth. So, for example, if you look at the venture capital investment in the country for startups, most of the venture capital investment comes from individuals who might be outside the country because they are putting large percentages of resources in those particular companies. But then what happens is, although these startups are Kenyan, they are many in number or increasing in number if you compare with our neighbors and so forth, the ownership is such that the amount that is raised from these startups goes back to the foreign investors, while diasporians could have a channel of investment that could help the startups that are based either in Konza or any other places to improve in terms of having that initial capital, but from a Kenyan who has invested into those particular startups. So the question that I'm trying to raise here, or the issue that I'm trying to raise is that we need to look at the instruments of investment. There are typical ones like the diaspora bond, which they want to put up there, but we can have other areas of investment as well.
Okay, so was the diaspora bond to actually work out, because it's one of those things that is being pushed from the meeting that was held today? How would that look like, and is it economically feasible or even profitable to engage in? Would your money be safe?
One thing that we know about investments in bonds and other and similar instruments is that these are long-term investments. You don't get the returns quickly. The other thing also is that it requires a lot of discipline along the way, so that you don't have to withdraw the amount of money and get it out. They are very, very good. It depends on the interest that is given. You can also choose to reinvest back the amount of money that you have. But the key message here is that it's a long-term investment. Most of diasporians do want to invest in something that brings them returns. I know some of them invest in bringing cars into the country and renting them out. Some of them are investing in property and turning them into Airbnbs and so forth, because they want a continuous return of investment as soon as they have put their money in there. So therefore, this is one welcomed move from whether it's Treasury, with the State Department of Diaspora being coordinated through that will help in that particular process. The other aspect which was mentioned by the peers, Madam Rosalind Njoroge, is the issue around the one-stop shop, where diasporians can come in, they can be able to get assistance in terms of establishing a company, in terms of meeting specific industry sectors or areas that they're interested in, and maybe actually just improving what we call the investment that they have, whether it's from a company that they're bringing or partnership that they're going to have, and setting it up so that they can be able to invest quickly. That to me will improve the issue around diasporians bringing investors and then having to walk around with these investors to various ministries, having to be able to face what we call the red tape issues. But with this, I think it will improve that interface between diasporians with investors, foreign investors, or even within themselves, wanting to bring those resources back to the country. And I think that's a very welcome move as well.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about what you are doing in these kind of groups. Do you take part in any community work in terms of giving back to the community, especially Bungoma, where you're from?
Yes, I do. And I know most of my constituents who might watch this later would know, because I have specific projects that I've done. I never talk about them in public. One of it was that historically, when I think it was roughly about 7 years ago, I decided to make sure that I could electrify my village. So I sponsored a full installation of power with the transformer. We talked with the KPLC. We then made sure that the school that was near my parents' farm got electricity. The market got electricity after that. And we also have a church, which is in my parents' compound. So my parents donated part of their land to build a church. And that church still stands. We also have various other relatives who took advantage of the initiative, and they got power. So we do have full connectivity. Of course, the government program that was there in place also helped. And of course, having people from the Kenya Power and Lighting, especially I think there was Dr. Ben, who was at the time the CEO of Kenya Power and Lighting, was very helpful, and we got power installed. So that's one part that I know we've done. There is a primary school that is next to our farm. It's called Bukunjangabo Primary School. I know that name is a bit of a mouthful. So this primary school, we electrified the computer lab. We installed electricity and piping for them to have computers. Right now I'm in discussion with the school so that we can build a library. I'm in discussion with the school so that we can sponsor them. My aim is to bring my former colleagues from British Telecom, where I worked for a long time, to really pull what we call full fiber into the village. The Indians have something they call follow the fiber. So that means you lay out a fiber optic cable install a few institutions and see the magic. And I know that's something that I'm dreaming of doing in my home village. And then, of course, I participate in communal work, which is also trying to help many other people. And I've got a large portfolio, not very large, but reasonably large portfolio of people that I support for their fees. I do pay for a number of people in their colleges and also assist some relatives who are outside the country as well in terms of their areas of prosperity.
Okay, so thank you. I imagine you're one person that's doing this. I wonder what the government can do. If one person can pull this off, what do you think a government that has the full backing of power and finances should be able to do?
To be honest, actually, what we have, me being somebody from Kenya, is that we need to have what we call, if I step back before I come to the government, I think our society needs what we call a build-up in values. What you see today is that we have, and I come to a value system because we need to have integrity. We need to have honesty in what we do. We need to have what we call the ability to appreciate merit. And these are values that we need to inculcate, not only in the government, outside the government, but even in our households. The religiousness of somebody will assist in enhancing those values. Going to school enhances those values because teachers teach you something. Parents also have a duty to enhance those values. But above all, the rule of law and how we govern ourselves as a country becomes extremely important. So if you ask me how this should be done, it's only the fact that when there's a contribution of this nature by individuals like ourselves, the government should be able to also look at how it can protect the most vulnerable. They always say, if you want to know the prosperity of a country, look how they take care of the most vulnerable in their society. If the most vulnerable are not taken care of in the proper way, then we have a problem. So that is what I can say. So we need to build this, inculcate the value system, if you ask me. And then, of course, there's corruption, there's issues to do with how the austerity measures that we need to put in place to avoid overspending and making sure that we do more of the manufacturing to create more employment and to make sure that we create more innovators who can be able to create services. These services will then end up creating employment. Employment then makes everybody's economic prosperity prosper, and that brings value back to the society. So these are the things that we need to be looking at. But we can't do this without the key pyramid issues or the pillars that are required, like the rule of law, avoiding corruption, being able to have a merit-based society, and also appreciating effort when there is hard work. And that will improve as well.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. At some point, you're a very interesting person to talk to, but it has to end. Unfortunately, so that has been Dr. Martin Koyabe from the quiet town of Bungoma. It's not a town that we speak very much about. It's impressive that there is so much that's going on out there, and that is what the Kenya Diaspora Media aims to do. We bring you stories from those places that maybe you don't hear much about, but there is so much development, there is so much life, and there is so much zeal for more that is happening. I'm sure if I ask around, I'll find more individuals that are just as passionate as you and are doing impactful work for the community. Please send them our way. We like to tell positive and impactful stories of people that are doing great work in communities.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on this particular program. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It's okay. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again. So thank you for staying with us throughout this particular episode. You can look for Dr. Martin Koyabe. I'm sure you have socials somewhere?
Yes, if you go to LinkedIn, just type Martin Koyabe, and it will bring you the rest of it.
Okay, looks like the only place to find him is LinkedIn, but however, you can find us everywhere on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube as the Kenyan Diaspora Media. See you in the next episode. Kwaheri.
Thank you.